Pregame.com.
Welcome to Pregame TV. I'm your host, Bryan Leonard, here with the Vegas Runner. If you enjoyed our last baseball game, you're going to love this one.
You're going to love it.
Let's talk about the Baltimore-Houston game.
Baltimore-Houston. What can you say about Houston, man? I mean, they've been hot. This is a team that's won some games in a row now and at a great price. Is it expected? You know, I've seen 15 Reds at the roulette wheel. It happens. You know, it's not probable.
Well, Reds and Black have a 50% chance of happening.
It's possible, exactly. And they have. I don't think their chances are 50% of winning and losing based on their record of 21-37 after that run. But right about now, considered one of the worst teams or the second worst teams in all of Major League Baseball, you'd be about even if you bet them every single game. So it's not like you're getting crushed betting Houston. And what I like about the opponent, Baltimore, is this is the most profitable team in the entire American League East. Everyone was expecting Baltimore to just go away. You know, last year they snuck up on everyone. They shocked everybody. And they did it with offense. And guess what? They're doing it with offense once more. Here's a team that's third in runs scored, first in OPS. If only they had pitching. But the reason why they're still winning ball games is because they have a great defense. They're third in errors. So at least they don't make it harder on their pitching staff. When you have a team that has problems with a high ERA, high whip, and then you have fielders that are also making some costly mistakes, it's like the perfect storm for it to just get out of hand and snowball. And that carries over into the clubhouse, and you have offense, you know, everything suffers. But here you got guys out in the field not making mistakes. So if anything, you got the offense looking to pick up the slack, the pitcher's slack. And they've been doing it. And I like this Baltimore team. Any team that could win on the road is the kind of team I like to back. And here's a team that's 5 games above 500 on the road. And they're not usually, you know, a team that you're going to be asked to lay a price with, and that's the reason they're the most profitable team in the American League East. Granted, the American League East has Boston, the Yankees, and Tampa. They're going to be a little more overvalued than Baltimore is, but still, the record speaks for itself. They're 7 games above 500 right now, and they're exactly where they want to be. So I'm high on Baltimore. Houston, like I said, I've seen the roulette wheel. I've seen guys hold the dice out here for 25 minutes without throwing a 7. It happens, and Houston's going to go on a run where they win 6 in a row. Do I expect it to continue? When you're 30th in ERA, 30th in WHIP, and then offensively you're 21st in OPS, 21st in runs scored, it's not going to continue.
All right, all right. It's interesting you talk about Baltimore being a team that doesn't have the pitching. Just a few years ago, they were building their team around pitching. They had Brian Madison on off a good year. They had Tillman. They had some good young pitchers. None of them really had panned out. I mean, Arrieta. So they've had some guys that when they came up, they looked pretty good. And they go, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. And ever since then, none of them have really panned out.
Nope.
And you take a look at Michael Gonzalez here. He came up last year, goes 9-4, 3.25 ERA, really came out of nowhere. He wasn't one of their higher-ranked prospects. But all his peripherals now are starting to show that he's starting to come back to earth now this season. He's given up more home runs than he had in the past. His whip's higher than it was in the past. I think this is really the Gonzalez that they have.
Yeah.
Last year, he is a little bit old.
He's not the prospect Gossman is.
Yes, and you know that was strange because being a fantasy baseball player, I was going to trade for the guy because I know he's a stud, and he got bombed his first 2 starts.
I said it too. That was on the radio. We covered that, and I said, "What is this team doing? Bringing this kid up? He hasn't even pitched in AAA. I understand you drafted him high. You want him to pay out, but let him pitch a little bit. You know, it's not like you're after the All-Star break. It's not like you're really making a run right now for the division. Your players are keeping you right there in contention. Let this kid develop. Bring him up when you need him, and hopefully he's more confident. Instead, he gets shelled. His first start, they put him up in Toronto. Really? The kid probably didn't even have a passport. He was like 20 years old, and they put him up his first start in Toronto. I don't get some GMs, man. Anyway.
Well, I'm going to use the Houston Astros here. We're going to make it official, but I've got some nice stats here we're going to talk about, so let's make this official. Unlike my colleague VR, I like to play those ugly dogs, man. What can I say? I'm going to play the Houston Astros here, and the reason being is, number one, they're playing good ball right now. Number 2 is 2 of the last 3 years, Bud Norris has posted an ERA of 3.8 or less 2 out of the last 3 years, including this year when he moves over to the American League. I mean, that's a lot of tough hitters. And I talked in the earlier video, in the Miami video, about OPS and how these certain pitchers have pitched against good or bad offenses. In 12 starts this year for Norris, 10 of those 12 have been up against top 11 OPS teams. So he's played a lot of good offensive teams, and he's still got an ERA of 3.8 or less. Interesting fact here, and if you were just say this to a guy on the street, he'd never understand this, he wouldn't know it. But the last 2 years, Bud Norris at home has had 18 games, 18 home starts at home. He's only lost, he got the loss in 2 of those games. Now, granted, the Astros bullpen blew some of those games for him. But when he's got 18 home starts and only 2 home losses, that's the guy I want to back in this price range. I'll take the Houston Astros here.
I love it.
It'll be my play. I got 2 ugly dogs.
I love it. I love it. You did good with the baseball last week.
Last week we hit the ugly dog.
I agree. Hey.
If we,
you ain't going to make...
I'll even take a split on
You're not... Exactly. You're not going to get rich betting chalk. And I always say, if the true line should be minus 500 and you got to lay minus 300, go up there and bet it every time. But you got to be pretty damn sure it should be 500. Because when you're betting chalk, the room for error is so slim that you got to be so selective. When you bet dogs, like these kind of dogs, there's a little more room for error. There's some wiggle room. You know, when you catch that plus 200, it makes up for some of those, losses along the way. And like you said, when you got 2 big dogs like this, you profit off a split. You don't need a 2-0. So, where with favorites, sometimes you'll go 2-1, 3-1, and not make any money. So I agree with you. Dogs is the way to go. But you pick 2 of the most ugly damn dogs I've ever seen in my damn life.
I'm a charity case, what can I say? Anyway, this is Bryan Leonard here with Vegas Runner. We're going to come back and actually talk about a game that you probably care about.
The Heat.
The NBA Championship Game 1 in just one moment.